Hello everyone, very nice to see you all, and welcome to the Ripple Effect. So let us have an overview on what you can expect today. We will have sort of an introduction. Who am I? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? That's an important one. Then we will go through the definition of information architecture. What does it mean, at least for me? Then we will oversee some challenges with information architecture. We will draw up a scenario, because I'm going to use an example company to guide you through this whole case I'm building up. Then we will see the impact of negative or the poor information architecture. Then we will go through a little bit of theory, and then it is going to get very exciting, because we will oversee the actions, what we can do in order to improve our information architecture. We will see what sort of changes they will come with. And then finally, I will give you some takeaways, hopefully some useful ones. Right. You will see this kind of loading bar along the way, so you will know how much more you need to bear with me, but trust me, I will try my best to be at least interesting and somewhat funny as well. Okay, so I'm Dora. My name is pronounced like that, but you can call me Dora. I'm head of design at Element Logic, which is a Norwegian robotics company. We are dealing with warehouse logistics, and I'm heading the design team. We are a very small group. We have a UX strategist, 2 UX designers, and myself. And we are building up the design from the ground up. It means that when I arrived to this company, there was some sort of a design system, but it was not a real thing. Now we have one, and we have a dedicated designer who deals with it, which is pretty cool, I think. And we also have a UX strategist who deals with strategical questions and research and everything in between what is covered by design. And we just hired a new designer, which I'm very proud of, so that's on me. Okay, but who am I, and yeah, what am I doing here? I was born and raised in Hungary, but now finally I'm living happily in Norway for a few years now, still learning the language, but let me tell you, it's pretty easy. So if you're speaking English, you have very good chances with Norwegian. Okay, this is my career in a nutshell. I started as a UI developer, then I switched to project management because I needed this for my diploma. I do have an MBA along with project leadership, economics BA, but I realized that management is not for me. I mean, the project management part with all the budget and timelines and all the stress and everything, it's, no, thank you. So I returned back to digital product design, and since then I'm dealing with mobile design, desktop designs, and now with robotics, human interface design. So it's very interesting. And recently I started to combine all this knowledge to a leadership role, so I think that's enough of that. There are a few abbreviations. Raise your hands if you know all of them. It's UX, DS, IA, A11Y, DX, CX. Okay, so let me just dig deep into that. UX, user experience, somewhat familiar. DS, design systems. I'm a geek, sorry for that. IA, information architecture. This is why you are here. A11Y, accessibility. Very important stuff. DX, developer experience. How many of you are developers? Okay, so you must be familiar with this stuff. It's quite important between designers and developers to have this kind of collaboration. CX, anyone? Ring a bell?
Customer.
Exactly, thank you very much. Customer experience. For a designer, it's also very important to deal with customers, right? Because they are our users, and if we are not nurturing them, they won't be happy, they won't be paying, so that's a shame. We really need to deal with that. Collaboration, again, it's one of my key motivations whenever I start wherever, working with whoever. I really need to collaborate with people. Let it be a conference, you just come to me, I collaborate with you, you collaborate with me. Let it be a work. I have a bunch of developers who are stuck, I need to help them, they need to help me. For example, when we refreshed our design system, we basically collaborated with the front-end developers. We submitted something in Figma, they reviewed it, and they gave us our approval or some change requests, and we changed it and merged it to branch. It's very important how we collaborate. And finally, this is what I do normally. I really like knowledge sharing and educative stuff. I'm a bookworm. I don't know what about you, but I really, really do love books. Whenever I'm very tense or I need to travel 23 hours, which I did, by the way, for this conference, I read books, and that's my thing. But I also really like to have fun. Probably you might not say this, but I'm sort of fun, and what fun means to me, for example, when I do not have anything else to do, I really like to sew clothes. When my kid was small, I learned how to sew clothes, and it was very nice to see that she actually fit in them, so that's great. All right, that's enough of me, I guess. So let us move towards the definition. What is information architecture? First off, information architecture is something that helps you to organize your content, to make it functional and findable, to make it actually usable for your user. Let me tell you about the product trio. I don't know if you've heard about Teresa Torres and the concept of product trio, but it's somewhat important when you are developing a product. It says that the designer, the engineer, and the product manager are equal partners. Usually, if you are getting into an organization, majority of the organizations, they are putting design below engineering or below product, which is somewhat strange. Design is a strategical asset to the company. Design is responsible for the users, one of the most important stuff in the life of your company. So Teresa Torres just realized that this should be equal within the organization, because information architecture, believe it or not, it will connect the user needs, the business goals, and the product structure. Again, the equal triangle, very important. And if you are into more details, I strongly recommend Teresa Torres' concept on the product trio. And finally, imagine information architecture like a Lego manual. Imagine you are trying to build up a Lego house, and you just realize on the third floor that, oh my gosh, I forgot one single item on the first floor, and I will never have a building at all, or it will collapse. Well, good information architecture will show you either the overlaps or where you are missing something. It will show the gaps, the logical problems within your structure. In other words, information architecture is how we make sense of complexity. Simple as that. What are our challenges? Let me tell you, the problems with information architecture will cause problems both for startups and even grown-ups, meaning big companies, but it was fun anyway. In case of startups, it's like, just make it work, just ship it. The investors will come and we have to deliver it in time because otherwise everything will blow up. So you just make it work. You just push it directly to the main branch, no matter what. And it will end up in an organic growth, which sounds sexy, right? Organic growth. Yeah, but what about overlaps? And what about logical problems? Never mind. We will grow into a big company where we will have a huge monolith that we should rather not touch, because if we touch it, it will collapse. So there's gonna be ad hoc fixes, patches, changes along the way, and it will just, grow even bigger, even scarier. It will become a monster. So when you have no or poor information architecture, your UX, user experience, will become fragmented. Your tech debt will be increasing, and there will become operational bottlenecks along the way. It will become, again, a monster. the results. Users will not find their way in your application or software. The flows will be messed up. There will be situations when you can get to one single point from 3 different paths, which might not be a problem, but what if you want to navigate someone else and you end up like in the end of a magical forest and you are just, oh my God, how did I get here? And you just look around like John Travolta in the meme, if you remember. So users are going to get confused, really, and the teams will get misaligned. Imagine that your teams are growing and you have multiple development teams. You have a QA team, support team, these kind of teams. And they are looking for one single piece of information. Every single team will look for that same piece of information in a different way, because they have references across your software. And they will find a way, and they will find something completely different than what was originally looked for. So your own teams who are trying to solve the problems or trying to develop a feature, they will block each other from scalability. And therefore, the evolving becomes at least limited, if not blocked. What's my scenario here? As I mentioned, I will draw up an example. Last year, I started to work with a company as a side project. This is a Hungarian company. They are developing a bank application, so it's fintech, and it's called a neobank. Do you know what a neobank is? Okay, 1 nod, 2 nods, great. Neobank is somewhat, at least in these terms, is a digital, 100% digital bank that deals with your finances without paper, to simplify it very, very much. So 5 years ago, a few guys teamed up and established this company with the aim of provide 100% digital banking to businesses, which is very important in the era of TransferWise, Wise, and Revolut. Because as we, normal human people, are dealing with our finances, it's okay to have a digital application. But for companies, it's much more complicated, especially when it comes to compliance or legal regulations. And I will refer back to that a bit later. At start, they had a very clear vision for the application. They hired a bunch of extremely clever and smart business professionals, bank professionals, who drew up the architecture for this whole application and did take care of all the documentation along the way. So it was a very clear, documented, straightforward path to move along with. And then, when they entered the market 1 year ago, it started to grow rapidly. And with rapid growth, there came a lot of feature requests from the users. Then the market realized that, hey, a new competitor is here. And along the way, the company had to have the official approval from the national bank that is directing all the banks across the country. So there were multiple requests, an increasing amount of requests coming from all around. And you can say that, well, the professionals who were hired a few years ago, they were sort of thinking about that. Yeah, sure, but what if you're living in a country where the legal regulations are changing every single month or every 3 months? It's much. It's a lot to handle. So you are having a clear roadmap, what to develop and how, and then comes the authorities and say, well, yeah, we need this feature in 2 weeks' time. What can you do? You're adapting. But it will result in this scattered navigation and chaotic dependencies. So your well-structured thingy will become a mess. That's for sure. What's the impact of these changes? This is a drawing from 2022 for this bank application. The small labels are not important. Just remember this image, how well structured, how neat it was. We are in 2024 now. It became much more complicated. Yeah, well, they have colors. Whew. We have colors at least, but it's not right. So just for the sake of showing what the information architecture is at the moment, which is not true because this is from November 2024, I just created this overview for you. Wherever you see double lines along the way, it's overlapping. Wherever you see menus all along the way, it is becoming more and more complex. So this was just for illustration. You can imagine that if this bank application looked like this, and it's only the mobile application, if it looks like this in November 2024, you can imagine that since then, there were at least 2 or 3 legal changes, compliance. There were a lot of feature requests that were known because the management required them. And we haven't even started user research. Right. We will go a little bit depressing. Sorry for that in advance, but we have to go in a very, very deep place so that we can move up in the end. It's everyone's problem, meaning that there are cross-dependencies across the whole team. And if a developer deals with this problem that they cannot find a piece of software or a piece of code, and they cannot fix the software, or they cannot implement a new feature, you can imagine how does it affect the rest of the company. It will also affect the support team, for example, when the users are calling in frustration, asking for help. And again, we are trying to detangle the dependencies across the code base, and support cannot help them because they can't really find a way. Obviously, support tries their best to document this whole thing and at least provide quick fixes, workarounds. But does it sound good if you have to provide a workaround for your users? No, I guess. So it will also end up in difficulty when onboarding new team members. Because if developers are stuck with their own code base, their legacy, they do not even touch it, it will become a burden to hire someone, because that's someone coming out of the market filled with hope that this will become their great job. And they will try to make themselves familiar with the code base, just to at least, deliver some features and start working, and they cannot find their way around. So they will become frustrated even during probation period, and they will leave the company. So your problem with your poor information architecture ends up in losing talent, because they will leave you. They will have much better options on the market. Still, jumping back to developers, as I mentioned, it's very important to me how we are collaborating, so sorry for that, but I cannot forget about the fact that how our developers are struggling with development cycles. Because when they are looking for their problematic pieces or looking for a place where to inject or implement the new code, they are causing more problems, or they are just spending time with only to looking for the right place. It's absolutely time-consuming and unnecessary thing to do. Teams are getting frustrated, and when they are starting communicating with each other, designers with developers, support team with developers, product people with developers, and across the whole organization, they just cannot have a single point of reference, and everybody is frustrated. Everybody. The fragmented content helps teams to work confidently. toward completely different goals. That is, I think, one of the most important things, that you can think that you know your way through the software. But if you have a different perspective, your self-confidence will just fall, because you will realize that the software has multiple other places that you are not familiar with. So it's just crazy to live in. And it's not finished, sorry. The priorities that are coming from product people and management, they will conflict. Because you as a developer will say, okay, I have to fix this in order to at least implement a new feature. But then comes the product people, yeah, I get it, but we have to deliver it because investors, deadlines, whatever. So there will be frustration and conflict between those teams already. The management will come with different objectives, what to achieve. But the product people will have different objectives, obviously, because they know the ground level, the low-level problems. We have to fix this in order to implement that, in order to have the compliance approval. And then comes management. Yeah, but we have to enter this and this market. Boom, conflict. I tried to explain this earlier, but there will be a lot of siloed information. You will have different teams coming from different directions, but the information stays siloed, which means it is separating teams. And when you're separating your teams, you're basically blocking the innovation. There will be no time for innovate your product, because all of your team members will deal with actually finishing up what they started, and they won't have the time or the brain capacity even to think about new stuff that they really want to put in your application that count as innovation at that point in time. Because that is one other thing that is important. Your software is evolving constantly, right? No stop. This is a train. This is moving forward. But if you try to innovate, you have to act right on that spot. There is no other chance. The train won't wait. You have to move along. And if you are not there mentally, professionally, software-wise, quality-wise, you won't be able to jump on the train and innovate. You lost your chance. Again, delayed responses. We will be forced into a situation where our effectiveness is reduced because we just cannot finish or cannot jump to the next project until we finish what we started. So our hands are tied, and not in a good way, right? Neglected IA slowly turns your app and company into a haunted house, full of surprises, dead ends, and people screaming in the dark. It actually happened, especially if you do not have dark mode, right? Right, I brought an example for you. This is a screen from the actual application. The company started to work with a design agency a few years ago, and I was hired to make the design right after this agency. This is their work. And I don't know if you noticed the problems with this screen, but I can scream. I won't, I promise, but I can scream whenever I look at it. You can imagine when I prepared for this presentation, and I just don't want to deal with that. But let me highlight something. For example, when I look at the screen, two very major problems I do have with it. One is these tags. They are focusing my attention directly there. And this is not the most important information on that screen. I could scream, but I won't. The other very important stuff is this delete user, which is very close to the footer bar, where you can also touch stuff, and very close to this button. Yes, this is a button. And you can unintentionally click delete user, which will trigger deleting the user. And it's a simple button. It's not even red. So, I screamed, sorry. So, this will give you cognitive load. There is no visual hierarchy. You cannot tell me what is the most important information on the screen. Or if you can, congratulations, but I couldn't. For me, there is a navigation difficulty in the screen. Where should I start? What should I do here? What can I do here? The flows are overcomplicated. And as I mentioned with the delete user, the critical actions are buried. You won't recognize them, that this is a critical action. I refer back to the compliance issues all the time. Now, I don't know what's the situation here in Australia, but in Europe, especially in Hungary, but across the European Union, there is the GDPR. GDPR is the law that is about your data protection. And this screen, as you probably noticed, is the user account details, the profile details. So whatever we touch on the screen or let the user to touch, then we are interfering with GDPR. We have to be compliant with that law. And we currently aren't. After all those depressing facts, just take a deep breath and let's dive into the theory. We have to balance complexity with clarity in order to make it right. The navigation is one of the most important things across the application. We have to centralize the control over the navigation. This will help the developers because they will find a way across the application. This will help the support people because they can give a clear path to the users when they are calling in frustration. And this will also help everybody else across the organization if they know one single path of navigation. When you are creating a front end for your application, it's very wise to create reusable patterns to reach scalable systems. You know, I mentioned I'm pretty much into design systems, and the reason why, there are two reasons actually. First, I'm very lazy. So when I create something, I try to use it every time because, well, you know, it just makes my life easier. And if it's well documented, developers can work with that too. The other reason is that, and I think it's more important than my laziness, is that the users get used to certain patterns. They will get used to certain navigation patterns, certain layouts, certain colors. Their brain, when they are using your application, it will notice that, hey, I know this kind of color. Hey, I know this kind of button. Okay, prior to this encounter, I used this button to do this and this and this. So probably this will mean the same thing. Users are lazy too. When you are dealing with your information architecture and when you are nurturing it, it will improve the usability, the accessibility, and the communication. And surprise, when your communication is done right, it's done right across the whole organization. So you are finally able to align your product with the product vision and the business requirements. Managing IA is like brushing your teeth. If you don't do it regularly, it gets messy very, very fast, and you will have bigger problems to fix. Okay, we are over the half of this thing. Not in time, but what I want to say. So status check, how are you doing? You're okay? Okay, let's make some breathing. Even if you want to, you can just move yourself, just groove a little. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, you know, yeah, that's great. Okay, I know it's strange, but you know, this is my first time giving this long talk. So this is for me as well, right? I got used to giving talks 30 minutes or 45 minutes or so. So this is one of my longest ones so far. So thank you very much for letting me dance a little. All right, what actions can we take? And this is where it comes very, very brutal. Brace yourself, lots of content coming. We will go through these items, and every single item that you see, it will contain actual steps. So, what can you do when you are conducting a full content and feature audit? You have to define the scope of the audit and the objectives. What would you like to reach? You should identify and prioritize the issues that you found. It can be a simple list, an Excel sheet, whatever you choose. You should establish a feature and content inventory. List and annotate all screens. If you remember the video that I created just for the sake of this presentation, that screen came from an inventory that I created. I screenshotted all the screens along the application, and I connected them, and I annotated them. What can I find on the screen? What can I do on the screen? Where is it connected, and with what? Navigation and structure analysis. Evaluate current information architecture. You have to analyze what's going on in your application right now so that you will understand the current situation. Without that, you are just wandering around, and you will have no idea what you are doing later on. User and stakeholder research, focusing on friction and inconsistencies. This will come back a little bit later, but you can do it right in the beginning, when you can discover what your stakeholders are thinking about the current situation. Let me tell you, there will be satisfied users. Bless you. There will be satisfied users. There will be happy people who are using your application flawlessly. But there will be some, at least if you are lucky, only some, who are not happy. Focus on them. You are looking for the unhappy people at this point. I know it's depressing, but believe me, it will get better. Cross-dependencies and complexities should be mapped out. If you are doing your inventory right, at this point, right in the beginning of the information architecture audit, you will already have your cross-dependencies mapped out, which is cool because at least you know what you are dealing with. Heuristic evaluation should be run. For example, similar content is organized similarly or not. Your content to the user is key. If it's grouped in the same way, good for you. You did a great job. But if the same type of content, for example, account information, is grouped differently, you have something to improve. For example, in this bank application that I'm working on, there are a profile in an account. And when I first took a look at it, I was like, what? I couldn't understand. And then someone came, tribal knowledge, right? Someone came and told me, oh, well, yeah, the profile is for you as a person, and the account is for you as a legal entity because you are a company, and you are registering yourself in this application on behalf of a company. Oh, boy. But it contains the same type of information, and it's grouped completely different way, at least on the front end. Synthesize your insights, highlight priorities, and give recommendations. At this point, you did the hard work. You can think, ha. But at least you are in a good place, because at least you mapped out what the problem is. You can map the dependencies across the product, where you will identify how and where the feature rely on one another, and with what access levels. Especially in case of fintech applications, access rights are highly relevant. But I guess this is the same with multiple similar applications. Map which screens or actions depend on specific APIs and backend logic. If they will use a different one, it might cause a problem. Flag features that are legally required or regionally conditional. Those are the screens, those are the content that you are simply not allowed to delete, no matter how hard you want it. Because those are legal regulations that you have to fulfill. Identify design elements or patterns reused across screens. This refers to the previous one that I mentioned regarding the design system and the user's wish to have similar patterns and navigations. This will help the users. When you are identifying design elements and patterns, and there are overlapping ones, you will have the luxury to choose between them. You will have to decide which one to move forward with, which is the one that serves your needs the best. Observe how support analytics or manual processes depend on flows. Because if flows are very, very complicated, then your support analytics and manual processes will become complicated as well. So you might want to keep them clean and tidy. Here comes the interaction with the users. Define your stakeholders. And I learned it in the hard way, but it's so obvious now. Stakeholder is also the CEO of the company. There are some CEOs who feel threatened by their egos if you're not asking their opinions. They are attached to the product. This is especially in case of the startups, where the product is the baby of the CEO. You really want to ask for their opinion. Obviously, in a bigger company, you might even have a chance might not even have a chance to discuss this with the CEO, but you want to have internal and external stakeholders. External, users, partners, etc. Internal, everybody in the company, or almost everybody. When you have your stakeholders, you have to conduct semi-structured interviews. How many of you know what semi-structured interview mean? Great. Semi-structured interview means that, yes, you as an interviewer will have your questions towards the interviewee, but you will let them speak as well. And if you are differing from the questions you want to ask, you let them speak, because it's pure gold. You want to hear your users. And yes, obviously, you will navigate back to the original questions, but there are situations when users formulate their answers with different words. They do not know the professional language or the right expression for what they are describing, but they are actually answering your question without knowing it. So let them speak. Sorry. Focus areas per stakeholder group, pinpointing frictions and inconsistencies. You're already interviewing your stakeholders. You might want to point out what are the common points where the problems lie. Because if you are starting interviewing by different stakeholder groups, you will figure that many of the users coming from different stakeholder groups have the same problems. They might say it differently, but the core of it will be the same. Observe task execution and workarounds. You know, this is the fun part in design when we are dealing with research and we'll let the users to show around how they are using the application. And when you observe your users, how they are reaching for a certain feature or a certain option they have, then you can figure it out, okay, this is the path they've chosen. This is what's familiar to them. And then you can raise your questions, why did you do that? And that is the most important question in product development, the why. Why do you do that? You will collect insights about broken mental models, inconsistent terminology, bottlenecks in navigation, overlapping and buried features, unused functionalities. From this, I would like to highlight also the inconsistent terminology. As I mentioned, users describe the same stuff with different words. This is no different in your own company. Even though you established a market, a word that is known across the market, and you use the same word, there will be a few people across your organization who won't use the same word because it's just not familiar to them. So you have to educate your people within the organization that this is the word that we are using. Or if you do not agree with the terminology that is used by the market, then you can figure out your own, but then you have to apply to conferences and speak about that and make it visible, right? It's a very important change. Cluster feedback, structure, navigation, labeling, findability, access control. This is what reflects to your inventory. You collected stuff, you organized stuff within your information architecture. Now this is your point when you can actually get feedback from your users. What you mapped out is actually the same way how them, the users, they perceive your application. When you try to move forward and improve your information architecture, you should focus on consistency, relevance, and simplicity. You will use smooth navigation and content presentation to avoid confusion. That's your main focus, to avoid confusion. Establish policies to ensure data quality, integrity, and security. Data quality and security are the most important stuff in your application. You have to ensure that. And scattered navigation won't help that. Apply the same terms, patterns, structures throughout the product to ensure predictability. This reflects on the user needs to predictable navigation across the application. Implement robust system for tagging and categorizing information. This will help you with the profile/account, these kind of problems across the app. Show only what's necessary for the user's role of context. In the banking application, we have multiple roles with different access levels. We have the simple accountant who triggers invoice payments, salary payments, and we have the managers who have to sign the transfers at the end of the day. So they will need different kind of information displayed to them in the application. The manager will need only the facts, what they are signing. The accountant, however, on the other hand, they will need details about where they are transferring, who they are transferring to, completely different stuff. Minimize complexity by using straightforward language, referring back to terminology. You want to have the simplest words ever. When I prepared for this presentation, I really tried my best to use simple English words. And it's not because anyone wouldn't understand it, but it's easier to process and move along and be quick about it. We still have a few minutes, so just bear with me. But my aim with this 1 hour was to make it extremely clear for you how information architecture works. And it's very hard to do it in 1 hour. Now, imagine the same hard things in an application, which is way more complex than a presentation. You want to keep it simple, because there will be users who are just navigating through their muscle memory, even. So you want to keep it simple for them. And that is why it's highly problematic when supermarkets are rearranging their shelves, right? It's crazy. They want to increase their sales because people spending more time in a supermarket will spend more money because they will find this and that and that. Great. But it will confuse the people. They won't find their ways, their usual ways across the supermarket. I'm extremely irritated by this fact because I know what's the psychology behind it. And that is why you won't rearrange your application. You don't want irritated users. Okay. You're creating high-level hierarchical structures based on content audit, feature inventory, and patterns. I believe that when you find a hierarchy in content, you will have an easier way to navigate through it. Formulate tasks that reflect the actions users take in the app to assess whether proposed IA is easy to use. It's even hard to read. The only thing what I want to say here is that you mapped out your information architecture, you proposed something easier, and then you test it through a prototype, and you check if your users are resonating with the easier information architecture. That is what this point is about. Include a mix of internal, external participants, test different IA paths based on their roles and needs. Again, accountant versus manager versus the developer versus the support people. What is important for them? Measure and use relevant data to revise structure before moving to wireframes or design. Designing, the act of designing, is highly time-consuming, as well as development. That is why you are using prototyping before writing a single line of code. That is why you are using structure revision and research and interviews before drawing a wireframe, because you want to save your work, want to save your time, and want to do it by saving money. Right. When you align your information architecture with your product roadmap, you have to understand business priorities to ensure how the IA supports key growth areas. Link IA-related decisions to metrics such as adoption, retention, or activation. I will speed up a little bit more from now, but this means that you are actually utilizing metrics along the way. When you can measure something, you can measure its impact as well. And if you have the impact, you will know how much its value. Plan IA around roadmap features so structure evolves with the product. Collaborate with product managers early to sync structural changes. Obviously, they won't know about sudden compliance changes or legal regulations, but they will know what comes next in the roadmap. If you are aligned as a designer who is working on information architecture with the product manager, you're already one step ahead. But now I made a mistake. Why would it require a designer to work on the information architecture? It causes problems to everyone. So it's a shared responsibility. Everyone is working on the information architecture, obviously not overlapping each other, but everyone is collaborating. And there should be a common way to do it. Build a flexibility into the information architecture to accommodate future services or regional expansion. Now, with this bank application, the company wants to expand next to Hungary, all next countries. How will they do that if they cannot have a simple information architecture that supports every single user need and the compliance needs? We are gathering feedback from stakeholders after implementing the information architecture changes. It's very important to validate back. Yes, along the way we had our several discussions, but this is how we implemented it. What do you think of it? Use analytics and data to validate if the new structure improves usability. Identify friction points that remain or emerge and refine IA accordingly. Treat IA as a living system and plan regular evaluations, like you're watering your plants, right? It's also a regular stuff you're doing. Now, this is what you're doing with your information architecture. You nurture it. It's very important that it's always growing. Yesterday, Diana Mount, head of design at GitHub, she mentioned the Sagrada Familia, which is a constantly evolving building. It's not yet finished, and if you ask me, it never will be. This is the same with information architecture. Document your learnings and decisions to ensure transparency and support ongoing optimization. This will also help you with onboarding new people. If you have clear documentation, it will be much easier to go through onboarding. Whoa. Finally, we are over the hard part, I promise. Now, what sort of changes can you expect if you are utilizing these advices? The ripple effect. I like this. The information architecture, if done right, it will become a part of your culture in your company. Let me show you how. Clear information architecture improves communication across the teams. Easier to scaling up, hiring, and onboarding. Consistent experience build brand trust. Your users will really like your applications. So whatever you will develop next, they will be first in line to use it because they know what they can expect, what level of quality they can expect. And it will help prioritize based on user and business needs. So if you remember that illustration, I just flipped it around. So from the chaos, you will have structure in the end. What we can improve. This awful image, I started to work on it, and now it looks like this. I have to use the same design system, so I have no words on the UI, but on the UX side, we use less space by actually doing an increased scope, because we have to deliver more data now. That is why the change in the design. There came a new feature request that we have to separate registration and personal data. And with the original structure, it wouldn't be possible. So I had to organize the data in a logical way. And as you can see, there are no more little pencils. We centralized editing and overviewing data. So when you are clicking on one of the accordions, you can open up, overview your data, and if you need editing, you just click here in the top, and then you will go into the edit flow. So it's very hard to change, very hard to mess up. And finally, we not just highlighted the destructive actions, but we also separated it pretty much from everything else. Remove the footer, so there is no unintentional clicks, and we even utilized the bigger padding between the last actionable item. And we highlighted this as much as possible. So if you touch it, well boy, it's on you. Wow, we finally arrived at this. Good IA is invisible, but its effect is everywhere. Meaning that if you start working on the information architecture early on, it will pay off in the long term. If you revisit your information architecture regularly, your products will evolve eventually. It will empower cross-functional collaboration across the teams and as well as with the user, because you involve the user, and the user will know that, okay, I can expect that this company takes me seriously, so I'm going to give my feedback to them so that they can improve their products in order that I will have a better product to use. I just love this. Everyone wins in this situation. Involve the user, ask them. A well-structured product creates well-structured companies. Based on the previous 1 hour, who feels that it will help your companies? Yeah, right? Okay, good. Sorry, I'm this audience mover type. Bad IA builds chaos. Good IA builds products. Confused users, leave. Happy users, on the other hand, they will pay. We like that, right? Because our revenue depends on it. Our happiness, our constant growth depend on it. If they pay, we can invest that money into the future of our company. It's very important that our users are happy. So choose wisely, act upon, and repeat. This is a living thing. This is the circle of life, and I won't start to sing. So thank you very much. I was Dora Makszy, and it was very nice to have this time with you.